Alright, welcome ladies and gents to our second knife skills lab. Today we're going to be doing chicken fajitas. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. So for the ingredients, you're going to need one chicken breast. Now you can scale this up if you would like this recipe. Here I have my chicken breast in a separate container, in a Ziploc bag, in a Cambro container to avoid cross-contamination. 2 tablespoons of vegetable or canola oil. You can use vegetable oil, or sorry, olive oil, but make sure it's not extra virgin olive oil. Half a teaspoon of chili powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of paprika, a 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of cumin, as well as kosher salt. No set amount for that. You just have to eyeball that. For the spice mix, you can vary this up for your personal taste. If you have a pre-made mix seasoning spice blend at your house, that is totally fine as well. Okay, as far as the fajita vegetables, I've got an onion. You're going to need half an onion for the fajita vegetables, and then we're going to be making a pico de gallo, a salsa to go with this. So you're going to need half of an onion for the fajitas, half of an onion for the pico, and half of a bell pepper. Okay, for the pico de gallo, you're going to need 1 tomato. Here I'm using beefsteak tomatoes. You can use 2 Romas. You can even use grape tomatoes. The other half of the onion, 1 small bunch of cilantro that is in the fridge right now, half of a jalapeno pepper, completely optional. If you don't like spiciness, leave this out. If you want extra spicy, then you can use the full thing. 1 garlic clove, and then 2 teaspoons of lemon or lime juice. I'm going with lime here. And then salt and pepper. Okay, so those are our ingredients. So for here, the first thing I'm going to do, I have on the side here, I have a separate cutting board for my vegetables and stuff. Here I'm going to be using this to cut the chicken. Okay, again, avoiding cross-contamination here. So first thing, whenever working with raw meat or any sort of ingredient like this, I'm going to make sure my station is clear. And I'm going to take care of the chicken first. Okay, so for step number 1 here, you are going to simply just combine all of the ingredients for the chicken. That is the chicken, the salt, and all of the spices. Okay, so that is step number 1 on your mise en place sheet. So, to prepare the chicken, if there's any excess kind of fat or sinew here, I'm just going to trim that off. Okay, chicken breast usually should not have a lot of fat on there. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut this into strips or cut it into a dice, depending on how you're serving this. I am going to be serving this kind of like a taco, so I'm actually going to cut it into a dice. So, using proper guide hand technique, I'm just going to cut the chicken all the way down. So now I have these little pieces here. Okay, each piece I'm going to cut into strips like this. Kind of similar to if we were making a batonette. Alright, so I almost have all my chicken done. Again, you can leave the pieces just like this. I am going to go with the dice. So now that all of my pieces are in kind of a rough batonette, I'm just going to turn this 90 degrees and then just kind of rough chop this like so. Alright, there we go. Okay, so now I'm going to put this into my Cambro container, and before I work with any other spices or any other ingredients, I am going to go change out my gloves, wash my hands, and then I'll be right back. Alright, so now that I got my chicken combined, I'm going to add in all my other ingredients. From here, I'm just going to eyeball everything. You don't have to be precise here. Again, this isn't baking, so I don't need to be exact. So about 2 tablespoons or so of oil. Kosher salt, just a little sprinkling over the chicken. You want to err on putting too little salt as opposed to too much. Let's see, just going through my list here again, about half a teaspoon of chili powder. Oh, let me go ahead and get the one that is opened. Okay, again, eyeballing here. Okay, 1/4 teaspoon of paprika. That's right. 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more. I like onion powder. Some black pepper. Okay, a little bit of cumin. And now I'm just going to add here, just because I'm a fan of it, just add a little bit of garlic powder. Now, if you want to balance all the spicy or the spices here, you can add a 1/4 teaspoon of sugar in here as well. It won't make the chicken sweet, but you can definitely do that. Okay, so you're just going to mix this together. Again, just kind of eyeball it. If you want to add more spices, you can. For me, yeah, you know what, I'm going to add just a little bit more here. Got a little extra paprika, chicken paprika are usually go together, and then some black pepper. Alright. Okay. So this is still part of step 1, is just combine your chicken, your spices, and the salt and oil together, and then you're just going to let this marinate. Now you can let this sit overnight if you would like. You can let it rest for as little as 20-30 minutes. Heck, to be fair, you can even cook it right now. So the longer that you can give it, the better, but just because I'm doing a demo here, I'm not going to take too much time here. I'm just going to cook this almost immediately. But in the meantime, I'm just going to set this to the side. Remember, if you're leaving this for a little bit of time, you want to make sure that this is properly chilled. All right, go on to the next step. All right, got my counter sanitized and cleaned off here. So now I'm going to go to step 2, which is to prepare the onion and the pepper for the fajitas. Okay, so putting all of this to the side. Now I have washed and sanitized my knife here. And now I'm going to take care of the onions. So for here, I have the stem end, or sorry, the root end, and then you have the stem end. Okay. I'm going to be cutting the onion and the bell pepper into a julienne. So from here, I'm just going to slice that part right off. So now I have a flat base. Bring my hand over. And just like the potato soup from earlier this week, I have 2 halves. Half of it is going to be a dice, half of it is going to be a julienne. Okay, so let me go ahead and peel this. Alright, onions prepped. Again, got a scrap bowl here to keep everything nice and organized. Now half of this I'm going to julienne. So how I do that is I take my onion that's halved, I'm going to trim off the root end, and then just like before, I'm going to keep my fingers curled, and then I'm just going to go around the onion slicing inward. Now if you are cooking, this is one step I'd recommend taking the video for your lab. Just take a quick video of you cutting the onion here. So Okay, and once it becomes unstable, I'm just going to plop it over. Okay, and now I have the onion for my fajita vegetables. And now for the pepper, obviously make sure you wash this off. I'm going to take the sticker off. Now for here, as far as how to prepare this is a little bit up to you. Now, some people, what they'll do is they'll take their knife and they'll just kind of trim around the pepper. Some people kind of unroll it like a book. Honestly, it's what you're more comfortable with. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to just take half of it and I'm going to kind of just trim around the outside and cut it off like that. So you see there's the center that you want to avoid, and then I'm just going to trim. Actually, let me turn it this way. Now, again, you can feel free to use the entire pepper here. For this recipe, I'm just going to use half right now. I'm not going to waste this, but I'll just put it to the side for now. All right. Now, for here, for the pepper, you have to just do a little bit of prep. So here you'll see there's this little white pith right there. That's very bitter. You don't want to eat that. So what you're going to do is very carefully is you're going to just kind of press the knife underneath that pith, run your knife, and just cut that down the length of the pepper. Then just kind of go the other way, being really careful not to be slicing towards your fingers if possible. Just pull that right out. Okay. Same thing with this one. I'll just slice that right off. Okay. Now for the julienne, you can put this skin side up. However, it's a little bit harder for the knife to kind of cut through that. What I'd recommend is having it skin side down. And keep your fingers wide, but keep them curled, and just cut this into a julienne. So, very thin matchsticks. Okay, we're going to be cooking this on a very high heat. You want this to cook very quickly. Okay, so there's one section. Again, see how my arm is kind of, or my wrist is going in a rocking motion, and I'm just using my fingers to kind of curl back. There we go. And there's our julienne peppers. So we're going to just put that into our onions, and then we're going to set this aside. All right, so now we have our pico. So from here, we're going to go to step 3, which is to cut and prepare all of the pico ingredients. So I've got my tomato, got my onion, cilantro is in the fridge. Since it was sliced in the store, it needs to be refrigerated. I'm going to use jalapeno, got my garlic, and everything ready to go. All right, now to prepare each of these ingredients, I'm going to cut the tomato into a dice. Now to do that, I'm going to just simply slice the tomato right in half first. And now from here, you can slice it each half into half again. Slice each half into halves. And then just simply go through and just chop them like that if you want more of a rustic, kind of chunky pico. For me, I'm going to kind of cut this into very rough strips into a batonette first. So taking my tomato, being very careful because it's a very unstable surface here. It's super important that I keep my fingers curled. Cut right down. Just gonna cut this half again. Give it to the side. Now one option you do have if you want to and you don't want the seeds here is you can take your knife and just kind of cut through and just very carefully kind of slice that out. So see how I'm kind of slicing towards my fingers here? You want to just do that very gently, very carefully, and then when you have most of it out, you can switch your grip over and just trim that right off. Okay, so again, that is up to you. Okay, from here, I'm just going to take the tomatoes and very rough chop them into a dice. Okay, and again, if you don't have it perfect, that is okay. Okay, now one other thing you can do if you want is you can take the tomato and slice it into very thick slices, almost kind of like what we did for our potatoes, and then cut that into kind of a rough bayonet, turn 90 degrees, and then just go right through. Okay. Are my cuts absolutely precise and beautiful and everything? No, but doesn't need to be here. Okay. One thing I will say is you can probably see it, my knife cuts were a little inconsistent there. It's because I didn't have my knife right up against my knuckle there. Okay, so learn from my mistakes. All right, so there's the tomato. Just gonna put that into my pico bowl here. All right, now for the yellow onion. You're going to want to cut this as finely as you can. Now if you don't really like the flavor of raw onion, you can just leave this out entirely. For me personally, I actually don't really like the flavor too much, so I'm only going to use about half of this onion. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this into a dice, and just like before for last week when I showed you how to do a small dice, you're going to cut down into very small, very thin strips, but your knife's not going all the way to the very end of the onion. So you're leaving the onion intact while leaving a bunch of little slits down the onion. Okay, so again, showing you the onion is held together, but it's cut into little strips. Now from here, last week I showed you that to kind of cut inward. You don't have to do that in this case because we cut it so fine. If you cut it very finely here, the onion will be fine enough here. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to go down, keeping my fingers curled and thumb back. Okay, most people, or a lot of people, what they do is they hold the onion like this, and then when they slice, yeah, not good. Okay, so very, very finely dicing. Okay, now for me, that is enough onion. Okay, I'm not going to waste this. I will use this for soup tomorrow, but this is enough for me. Okay, you may want more or less. In fact, that's actually probably a little too much for my personal taste. Yeah. So, play with it. You know, that's one thing that's nice about cooking as opposed to baking, is that you can kind of play around with this however you wish. Alright, one thing I would also recommend is have a towel or something to kind of wipe down your station with as you work, so you're avoiding cross contact, but also just to keep your station clear. Alright, for the cilantro. Now, whenever you are slicing any sort of herb, okay, especially a delicate green herb like cilantro, you want to try to be as gentle with it as you can. Meaning, you want to cut the cilantro by going over it once. Okay, you see a lot of times when, like, you know, on social media, TikTok or Twitter or whatever. I don't have a TikTok, so I, can't speak for that, but a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll take herbs and they'll just kind of keep going over and they'll just keep chopping and chopping and chopping. I'm going to show you that here in a second, but what happens is when you do that, you're just going to press all of the oil and flavor out of the cilantro, and you're going to just press it into the board. you're not eating the cutting board, you're eating the cilantro. So let's try to keep the flavor in there. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to just bunch up the cilantro, kind of just roll up as much as I can. And you're just going to try to just cut very finely, and you only want to do this once. You don't want to keep going back and forth here. So I'm going to keep my finger curled, and I'm going to try to cut as finely as I can. Again, this is where that rocking motion really comes into play here. So cut really, really finely. If there are some big chunks in there, so be it. Okay, just gonna kind of eyeball this. Let's see. Yeah, that looks about right. Okay, so that is good as far as cilantro. If you're one of those people that doesn't like cilantro or thinks cilantro tastes like soap, obviously leave this out. Okay, now let me show you what happens if you just keep going back and forth. So if I just keep going back and forth and just smashing the herbs, you're going to see my cutting board is going to start to turn green because all the flavor and oil from the cilantro is being pressed out of it and squeezed out of it and into the board. And yeah, you get the cilantro to be all nice and fine and everything, but it doesn't matter. Look at that. Look how like green already my cutting board is getting. Okay, and already you can see, if I put my knife to the side and just scrape this off, you can sort of see how much cilantro, how much of that essential oil and flavor is gone now. So with any sort of herb, whether it's basil, parsley, whatever, one pass through. If you don't get it all in one pass, then so be it. Okay. So let's go ahead and go to the next vegetable here, and that is our jalapeno. Now I'm going to use about half of it. This one is a pretty large jalapeno, so I may actually use a little bit less than that. But here, I'm just going to keep my fingers curled. First things first is I'm going to slice it right in half. Okay. And then I'm going to top and tail one half. Now from here, I'm going to slice the pepper in half, and I'm going to get this white pith out. Now, in a jalapeno or any sort of spicy pepper, the spice isn't from the actual green or outside fruit part, it's actually in the seeds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, just like I did my tomato, or the bell pepper, I'm just going to take my knife, just kind of stick it right underneath the pit, and then just run it through. So just go through, okay, and make sure you tap out the seeds there. Again, same thing here. Just take the jalapeno. It's okay if you don't get every little bit, but you do want to get a lot of it out of it. Okay. First, before I do anything else, let me clean up my board here. Let me just check the camera. Alright. Okay, now from here, just going to take the pepper, and now I want to cut this into a brunoise. So I'm going to take the little bit of jalapeno, cut it into a very fine julienne, turn the pepper 90 degrees, and now I'm going to cut it very, very finely. Alright, now, one thing I probably should have done is wear gloves while doing this, okay? Do me a favor, go wash your hands after this. You just have a spicy pepper, now it's on your hands. If you go do anything else, whether it's rub your face, go to the bathroom, or try to put your contact lenses in, it's not going to be fun. I've done that once before. And keyword, once. Never again. Okay. Okay, so now that we're here at the stove, we're going to go to step 4, which is we're going to heat a large pan, a saute pan, over medium heat for about 3 or 4 minutes. Now, if you're using a stainless steel pan, I would make sure to charge the pan with heat for about 5 or so minutes here. Water should be able to kind of bounce around the pan here. So I've been having this going for a little bit. You're going to see if I splash in a little water. Hold on, let me get a little more. You're able to hear the water kind of, turn to steam immediately. All right, now here we are going to saute the chicken until heated all the way through. Now, if you happen to have a thermometer, I would heat this up to 155. Now in ServSafe, we talk about how we want to cook chicken to 165, but in my opinion, that's not only overcooked, but unnecessary. Food continues to cook even after you take it off the heat, so we're totally fine. Now, whenever you are sauteing, you can take a spoon and just kind of stir things around and move it around while it's in the pan. The other thing that you can do is you can actually pick up the pan, and the shape of the pan allows you to kind of do a thing where you have the pan in your hand, in your wrist, and you're able to kind of flick the pan back towards yourself, and what happens is the food runs to the edge of the pan, and you flick it, and you basically flip it back in the pan. So, I'll show that here in a second. So, I have my pan charging. Here in my mise en place, getting everything set up. I've got my chicken right here that's been marinating. I've got my fajita vegetables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook the chicken, and then I have a separate clean bowl off to the side here to put the chicken in after it's done cooking, and then I'm going to throw in my vegetables. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So even though the chicken's got some oil, I'm going to put in a little bit more here. This is a non-stick pan, so I don't have to really worry about putting too much oil. Just one careful note, if you are using a non-stick pan, make sure that it is not smoking. Okay, non-stick pans are not designed to get super, super hot. Okay, so if it's smoking, turn it down. All right, so I'm going to add my chicken right in. You should hear it sizzle immediately. Okay, so my saute motion is I'm going to just flip the chicken just like that. Okay, I'm going to cook this for a couple of minutes until it is cooked all the way through. All right, we'll bring the camera back when it's ready. Okay, this looks fairly good. So give it one last toss, and then I'm going to put my chicken right into a separate bowl, keep that to the side. Now I'm just going to place a little bit of oil in the pan, and I'm going to saute the vegetables. And as soon as the vegetables go into the pan, I'm going to add in a little bit of kosher salt, just a tiny bit. And if desired, a little bit of black pepper. Once again, I can just simply saute this until it's good to go. Has a little bit of color. Now, if you're using a stainless steel pan, not a non-stick pan like I have here, you may see some brown bits kind of sticking to the bottom of the pan. That is actually a good thing. That brown and bits at the bottom of the pan, you can actually scrape off, and it's very, very flavorful. Now, if you're scraping it off and it doesn't want to come off, what you can do is you can add a little splash of water in there. That will deglaze the pan and get all that delicious fond off the bottom. So for now, I'm just going to saute this and we'll be back. All right, so this looks good to me. Got a little bit of color on the onions and on the peppers. If you like your fajita vegetables a little bit softer, then continue cooking it. But for me, this is good. All right, now that we have everything set up and ready to go, let's go ahead and assemble this. All right, and now let's just assemble this. So I have a tortilla here. Now I'm going to spoon over our cooked chicken here. Spoon that right over. Now, obviously you can serve this however you wish. If you want to serve it with beans and rice, you can. Here I'm just going to keep it nice and simple with a tortilla. Okay. Got my fajita vegetables here. Just gonna put a few right over the top. Pico right over that. Just spread that out a little bit here. Now, I've made a chipotle cream sauce to go with this. You can use sour cream, cheese, whatever you would like. This is made just by taking some sour cream, about half a cup sour cream, half a cup mayo, and then blending it with a chipotle pepper that's in the can. Obviously, this is not something you have to make. I just had this left over from something I made earlier this week, but I figured it'd go well with this. So, just gonna squeeze this right over the top. There we go. Garnish it with just a couple limes and a sprig of cilantro here. So, and there we have it, our chicken fajitas, nice and ready to go. So remember, if you are cooking this lab, remember to take 2 photos, one of your mise en place, your setup before you start. Take a photo of your finished plate, and then as far as the video, make sure you film yourself just cutting the vegetables. Record about 10 seconds of that. And as always, if you have any questions, just let me know. All right.